Hey, welcome in. It is Tuesday night, so you already know that what that means. We are live with the vent. If this is your first time on, the vent is simply a safe space for you to listen, to be heard. It is communal space for everyone to join in on the conversation. So no life experience is excluded, no life background is excluded. Everyone is part of the conversation. Every voice is valued, and we seek to bring relevant conversation, practical information, as well as calls to action and challenges as we move forward. So we want every time you leave the event, you enter into the event, you drop into the event and leave. We want you to leave with something to think on, something to act on, something to share with others. So even if you're on right now, share this live with your family, with your friends, with people that you're connected to. Tony is in. Hey, Tony. So whether you're with us on YouTube at the Vent Live, whether you're on Facebook or you're joining us on Instagram, it's always exciting to see familiar faces, familiar names and handles, and it's also exciting to see new faces. You are always welcome in the Vent. We are here tonight. We are kicking off season 5. Woo! We are kicking off during Black History Month. So tonight's conversation is centered around our story, our power. There's so many voices out there. There's so many people controlling narratives. There's so much information out, just information, whether it's real or not, true or not, it's information floating around. So we want to, one, be able to give you valuable, relevant, and accurate information, but we also want to bring you relevant information, and we want you to join in on the conversation from your experience. Tonight, the other great part about this is we have a very special guest, my sister friend, Leticia Lee. She is joining us. Just a little bit about her. She is an amazing speaker. She is a prayer warrior. We met at Virginia Union University while we were in grad school, so we got our MDivs together. So we trusted the process, right, and went through that together. We've been able to do a lot together, both ministry wise, sister friend wise. I'm always excited to be able to share this space. She is not new, so she has been on the event before when we talked about intellectualism, anti-intellectualism in the church. So I'm just excited to have her back, that she took time out of her busy schedule to be back with us tonight. But that's all I'm gonna say, because I'm gonna let her share some about her as well. So I'm gonna bring her on screen. Hey, TC.
Hey.
Thanks for
How
joining
y'all
me.
doing? How you doing?
How are
Thanks for
you
having
doing
me. So
tonight?
happy to be back on the vent. I am doing fantastic. No other place I'd rather be at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night on a good February of 2025. So glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Can you just give the people a little bit of background, just so you know, like what you do, who you are, just share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I am indeed a licensed minister here in Richmond, Virginia. I serve in the Church Hill area. I am the pastor of the ministry church, where we strive to remember to put back together the dismantled body of Christ that has been dismantled due to poor theology, poor doctrine, and the things that we continue, the harmful and traumatizing ways we continue to perpetuate a harmful theology and doctrine within our church, more specifically the Black church and the community. I am also a faith community outreach organizer for an interfaith nonprofit called Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, where we do creation care and environmental justice, mobilizing and organizing. So yeah, that's a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I love it. And the great thing about that, especially as we kind of go into the conversation tonight, is if we talk about Black history, as we talk about just control our narrative, like being able to be in multiple spaces. So being able to do and strive and support people in ministry spaces, as well as in other spaces where it's community driven and even interfaith spaces where everybody doesn't have the same belief system, but you're able to do things in a collaborative effort. So that's always exciting to
Yeah.
have those two things together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. People ask me how all the time, how do you do it? With so much that's out there and so much that's on the table to eat. How do you decipher what you're gonna put on your plate? And I'm pretty sure we're gonna walk through some of that as as we talk in conversation on tonight.
Absolutely. So we're gonna hop in since we got all this wisdom and experience in the room. Let's hop in again. Tonight's conversation is really centered around our story, our power. So, controlling our own narratives, collaboration. So we want to talk about that from several different viewpoints, theological as well as very practical things. So we're gonna hop into the first question actually is an audience question that I want y'all to think of before I ask Leticia a question. So the first question for the audience, and you can just drop it in the comments. Hey, everybody that's joining us on Instagram, Ashley, Lindsay, Melissa, thanks for coming in. We The first question is, what's one word that comes to mind when you think about Black history? So some of your words may vary based on how you grew up, what you learned in school, what you learned on your own. Some words may vary based on the state of the world now, with some things in place since we've gotten a new president in place where things are rolling back and certain celebrations are no longer happening. So what's one word you can think on that as we go roll into the first question for our guest? What's one word that comes to mind when you think about Black history? Our first question for Leticia is, so we're going to look at kind of who, as we talk about controlling the narrative, we kind of want to look at who gets to tell the story. So we think about Black history, we think about Black stories,
Mhm.
Black voices, things that are, who gets to tell the story, right? Because Black history is often told from a perspective that doesn't always tell the complete story or reflect the full truth. So my question for
Yeah.
you is, what are some ways we can make sure our history is told the right way by the right people?
Yeah, absolutely. And pardon me just a second. I have a little noise going on in my
Nope,
background. I
you
want to make
good. While you're
sure
doing that, I'm gonna post
it
people's
doesn't.
words. So I'm gonna post people's words while you're doing that. So my mom, Tora Sweat, that's my mama, y'all. She said the word that she thinks about when she
Hey,
thinks about
Ma.
Black history is overcomers. That's a great word,
Mhm.
overcomers, especially considering the history and things that we've had to fight through. Loving all my five kids said freedom, power. Grammy of Kanadi Jacob, and if I said that wrong, I apologize. Said proud. So we have quite a few words from people as far as what they think about. But I would love for you to answer, what are some ways that we can make sure our history is told the right way by the right people?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about one of the ways our stories can be told, particularly as a Black people, I think about um, how our stories have been told and have been told well, right? We have a responsibility to one. We know that our schools and sometimes our churches are not in a space and in a condition to give us what we need well. I say at this right here is just simply fundamental. Guys, we have to read. We have to be in touch with other Black scholars, other Black voices, making sure that we are tapping into those that have left insight for us, that have come before us, that have left insight behind. Storytelling is very important. We know that as the Black people. I continuously lean into that as well when I think about grassroots organizing. Also, it is we can't. History has thrown the colored man out, right? Meaning history and the systems that may be have twisted a narrative to make the majority story presidential. There had come a time where We have stopped storytelling. Some of that has been a way for those that have, like our grandparents and our great grandparents, to cope with trauma and certain things that had happened to them. But yet, that is no excuse because we live in a generation and in a time where we do have access to information. We have resources that can go to. We have places like here at the Vent that provides resources where we can get the truth of our story. And then once we know, it is our responsibility to keep the story going. It is not the responsibility of the school. It is the responsibility of you and I and the community to make sure that we are one, speaking up for when we hear misinformation, two, and digging deep, being in community with other persons that are willing to share and give information as well, and sharing our history. Sit at under the hands of others to expand your mind, and then take that information, cross check it, right? Just don't take anything. Because there's a lot of misinformation, but once we have creditable information from creditable sources, it's our responsibility to then share that with our children and the generations that will come after us, and to write. We must write. We must put pen to paper. We must document even the stories that we are enduring, even the challenges, the injustices that we see in our world and throughout our nation today. We must put pen to paper and make sure that that these experiences do not get left behind.
That's good. That was so rich. One of the biggest things that you said, reading and writing. And that is, if as we think about like American chattel slavery, those are the two biggest things
Hmm.
that they took away from us because they understood how powerful it would be if we knew how to read, if we knew how to write, how
Right.
powerful we would become having those abilities. So that's why they didn't want us to be able to do it. And then another thing, like you said, cross checking. So the Bible, I am a Bible believer all day. I grew up Baptist. Y'all know how Baptist people are with the Bible. However, like you said, read the Bible, but also read other things because the Bible is great for
Absolutely.
religious support, right? But reading other books, that even books that support the Bible. So if you want to read like ancient Roman and Greek history, and you want to learn other languages like Hebrew, learn those things. So one, when you're reading the Bible, you can read it in context of the time that it was written,
Hmm.
and then two, finding other things that coincide with just life. Reading like one a great book that I even when we were in seminary, like Barracoon, things that told stories about like
Hmm.
Black people and what they were able to establish and to do. And I have to shout this book out because you're talking about writing your own story. Katie's Canon, right?
Yes.
Dr. Katie Geneva
Yes.
Cannon. These are book. This is a book by a Black woman who supported so many things, especially womanism, but being able to tell stories of our own history in our own voice and line it up with our spirituality as well, and being able to combine that so that I may read Mark Twain, but I'm also reading Katie's Canon, something that speaks to me as
Hmm.
a Black woman, and the experience of my ancestors and, other people that I'm connected to. So I think you saying that about reading and writing is so powerful because they try to strip us of that, and we have to really train ourselves into like really going and reading the books or listening to an audio book, whatever you need to do to get that information.
Absolutely. And it's biblical, right? Like it's biblical. Like, sometimes we think as believers and have been taught and actually trained, if you will, to believe that when the Bible says study to show yourself approved, that is only within one realm of a context. No, if I only stay in one place, then how am I totally studying to show myself approved? Right? Like there's these spaces because there are false witnesses. Right, the
Mm-hmm.
Bible tells us that as well. So we have to make sure that we are indeed doing our due diligence, and if we never question what it is that we are absorbing, how do we know whether it's sweet or whether it's sour
That's
if
good.
there's nothing to compare?
Come on, drop that on us. How do you
You
know?
know, and how do you know, right? And I say that because, like, real quick, like, I remember the first time I went on a fast, um, and I went back to like drinking like regular juice, like from the store, like Minute Maid or whatever. And this is like after not drinking any like juice or like I was drinking things like just pure pineapple juice, pure orange juice, right? And so like I never really realized how sweet the things I was taking in. It was sweet, but over sweet, right? It was over fantasized, right? It was so sweet and so delicious that it was far from the truth. But until I had a taste of the real fruit juice, I never knew how artificial this 1% fruit juice really was in its sweetness.
Come on now. That's good. And that also, and I'm gonna move from this question, but this is good. You keep dropping gems on us, right? So for me, what that speaks to too is like often in our tech, like you said, we have to teach our children, ourselves, people around us, our history at home. We can't depend on the schools because if you look at the schools, and I used to be a history teacher in middle school, and I had to really change some things because what I knew versus what was in the textbook were two different things. So
Mm-hmm.
I often had to bring
Mm-hmm.
in other sources, excuse me, to support the truth versus what's here and the creative wording that's put in books now and the things that are redacted and the things that are changed. So that is like that juice, right? Like I had this juice, but then I got the real thing and I'm like, wait a minute, y'all telling the history, but this is not the complete picture. This is part of it, but you're not giving us a
Yeah.
complete picture. And you don't know, like you said, unless you're exploring in other areas. And we have to do the due diligence. That's on us. We have to do the due diligence. And like our churches, our other spaces that you go into, giving us that information and us provide, like you said, providing the resources so that people have it in an accessible way. So thank you so much for saying that because that's the truth. It's the truth. We got to do some work to get
Yeah.
it. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that kind of puts us into excuse me, our next question as well. As we talk about, like our faith spaces, as we talk about the different areas that we're in. One of the things before we go into that question though, y'all know this is community conversation. So we want all the voices to come in. I see your comments on the side. I see you guys on Instagram, on Facebook. Um, real quick comment on Instagram. Court Board said, "Hey, Court said the school won't teach you everything you need to know." She said her mama said that, and that also leads us into this audience question because that's so true. They're limited for many reasons, some intentional, some unintentional. But here's the question for the audience, and I would love for you guys to answer in the comments. Who has had the biggest influence on how you see Black history? So has that been like a faith space for you? Has that been school for you? Has that been family or community? Has that been you teaching yourself and learning things on your own or some other source? So has it been a faith space? Has it been school? Has it been family or community? Has it been you learning on your own or some other thing? Who has had the biggest influence on how you see Black history? Definitely want to hear that from y'all. I would say I don't know if her answer might be her mom or her family. Based on that comment that she left, I know for me it would be my family. I learned that sound like a family answer. For me, I know it would be my family. I learned so much, like from my mom, from my grandparents, just sitting with my great grandma. Like I've learned, and not always a lesson that they taught verbally, but like shucking
Mm-hmm.
peas and corn and, humming songs. Those were lessons that I learned in my grandmother's living room, in my grandmother's kitchen, on my grandmother's front porch. These are lessons that I learned by watching how they live, and my mom, learning how to pray, like learning these things just by watching how
Yeah.
they moved.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I read. So, is that a question for me? Is
This is
that
the
a
audience, but you can definitely answer
this
as well. I
audience
want,
question?
want to hear you too. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, this was pretty interesting as I began to think about it, because honestly, I didn't learn anything about who I was. Like, we talked about culture, cultures as a whole, right? Like my grandfather, my folks, grew up Spain, England. My grandfather was from Philly, but my mom, all of them grew up overseas. So my mom was in the 10th grade. So we really didn't have too much of these like conversations about Black history, and things like that. I kind of uh, started picking up gems and discovering who I was through my faith space at church. And definitely, Virginia Union undergrad was like the extra sauce. And oh my God, this seminary does not light everything on fire. Like, so all of that is some self-taught stuff, which is one of the reasons why I say that when you become hungry for something, you'll learn how to find food.
That's it. That's good. When you become hungry, you'll
You'll
learn
learn
how
how
to.
to find
We got to
food.
use that. We got to quote that somewhere. When you become hungry, you'll learn how to. Yeah, that's good. And that also speaks to the fact
Yeah,
that where you grew up and how the people who raised you, how they grew up, has a big influence on like what you learn and how you learn it. Because if I had a different experience, that may not be top of mind for me, or it may not even be something that I think is necessary, because I grew up in a completely different culture.
absolutely.
So that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
My mom said, so her big influence was her family and an interest of knowing more.
Mm-hmm.
Tony said her parents, she said it was mandatory at the dinner table growing up and school, but I grew up in all Black schools. So
Mm,
thank you for sharing that. And I know Tony is
that's good.
I think being from the South, like I'm from the South, so it's certain things that I had to learn. Even where I grew up was
Mm-hmm.
less than 10 minutes away from Nat Turner's Rebellion. So it was some things that like you just learn because
Mm.
it's so close.
You have a choice.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's the proximity.
You
So
didn't
it's
have
like
a
you don't have
choice.
a choice. You have to learn. Court said the adopted grandparents that volunteered at my elementary school, and she said one of
Mm.
them was a DJ during the civil rights era. How dope is that?
Wow.
That's cool. Yeah, like during civil rights era. I know some amazing.
I'm trying to be at that party.
Right. I know those stories are like out of this world. Like those, they need to write a book if they haven't already.
Yes.
And that is actually the perfect segue into our next question for you, TC. It says history has shown when we come together, we get things done. So we talk about civil rights
Mhm,
movement. There are many examples,
mhm,
but from the civil rights movement to Black Wall Street, it's been proven that when we collaborate, when we come together, things happen. So in
mhm.
today's world,
Absolutely.
what does true collaboration look like, and why is it still so important?
Oh man, you locked and loaded. Let's start with what is true what does true collaboration look like? Man, gosh, I hope I don't get in trouble. All right, boom. So we're
Say it.
gonna just
Look,
go
this
for
event, we real over here.
it.
Say it.
And this is the kind of stuff we got to talk about it, right? So, what does true collaboration look like? A lot of that starts with, and let me be clear. I'm having a conversation right now, with my Black family, if you will. The beginning of collaboration starts with first realizing that we share in some of the same struggle. We are having a difficulty in the majority. Yes, we are seeing silos and pockets of groups and organizations and collaboration beginning to happen. But there is a vast majority of the demographic. And for valid reasoning, right? But we have to start coming around and realizing that we cannot continue to fall into the false narrative and into the reverse psychology that systems have pressed upon us to break us apart, to keep us separate, to discouraged community, right? Since the beginning of enslavement, when they put us in the vessels of in the bellies of the ship and separated so that no two dialects could be amongst one another, and all we had was the sorrows of our cries that created community and togetherness, right? We have spent way too much time focusing on the things that make us different, which has been set up and has been strategic. We got to start coming together for the common ground of our similarities and getting out of that reverse psychology. So we have to realize that our minds, the psyche, has been tricked to think, I don't need nobody. It's me and me alone. I've got to protect my peace. I'm gonna stay over here. No, because it's really not peaceful, right? Not being able to share the struggles and the challenges and the chaos. I'm talking about the things that happen within our personal context, let alone these bigger, more communal issues, things that impact us from a legislative side or from a governmental standpoint or from a law aspect. We have to learn how to be community, even in small group first. And that's for me. How do we come together and how do we disrupt that reverse psychology that continues to separate us? Uh, the Bible also tells us that two are better than one and three are better than two. For if one falls alone, there is no one to help them up. But if there are two and one falls, there is help. There's also accountability. There's also accountability. True community means holding one another accountable, holding one another in love, sharing in storytelling, sharing in resources, and doing the work together. Doing the work together. Encouraging one another and understanding that we can have disagreements and we can have differences. We don't have to agree on everything across the board all the time, but can we agree on the one common goal? Can we agree that we have had enough of the injustices that we have seen happening in our community and pressed upon Black bodies for centuries and centuries and centuries? Can we agree that we are sick and tired of the false narratives that have been pumped out of pulpits and have helped to dismantle the body of Christ, further separating us than providing a life-giving theology? Can we agree on those things?
Yeah.
And then work out the minutia in between.
That's good. That is so good. That's what I was like. This is why you're here. Because of answers like that. This is why you're here. So honest, so true. Because one, like you said, we have so many commonalities, and agreement doesn't necessarily mean that we agree on how we're going to do everything or we agree on every single part of it. But like you said, as long as we have a common goal, we can collaborate because we do things in a different way. So you may handle one part, I handle a different part, but we still are going to the same space. And that also reminds me of like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Often people, the narrative is that they were so against each other, but they were just attacking the enemy in two different ways. But they had the same goal. They had the same goal. They had the same common enemy, and they had different routes that they took to get there. But that doesn't mean that they were enemies. It just means that they took a different route to get there. And I would argue that both were necessary. We needed
Both were
both.
not, because people are different. People
Right.
respond to different types of action. Some people
Hmm.
needed the rhythm and the wave in which the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King did certain things. Some people needed some of the radicalism and some of the ways in which Malcolm X showed up. That's just like the biblical text. Some of us need a certain type of structure, and others need something different. We all need food, but the
Right.
reminds me of my favorite Bible verse. When we take a look at Acts 2, when Pentecost begins to happen,
Yeah.
and tongues of fire come upon the disciples, or the apostles, if you will, and allows them to speak in a language
That's
where
it.
all nations under heaven can hear.
That's it.
But the
Yeah.
gospel
That's it. Yeah.
was the same.
That was it. Same message, different. Even if you're going back to the diaspora, different dialects, different languages,
Hmm.
but everybody was getting the message of what was happening and what would go forth. Even if we are speaking different languages, we have a common goal.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so we're still together. We're still together, and we can still
still
walk
together.
we can still step together. So I think that's important, like you said, and it's the awareness of that. It's also the accountability of having someone with you, and just echoing what you said. And I think the other great thing about that, it is also building relationship. And this is honestly part of the biggest one of the biggest reasons why the event exists, and why I believe we're able to start making change and continue to make change, is that relationship is so important. So if we can
Yeah,
establish relationship and we can come together and we can support one another, we can do anything, because I
we can do
trust you.
anything.
I know you got my back. We may not agree on
Hmm.
everything. We may have different life experiences. We may have grew up in different geographical areas. But at the end of the day, I know that you got my back. And I know that we have shared something. So when we go out, when we have this time together in our small space, and when we go out into the world, we can do anything because
Uh-huh.
we have relationship. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter who
And we
coming
know
in.
that to be true.
Yeah. Like, we've
Yeah,
tested
yeah.
it. It's real. We can
It
conquer
works.
anything. We can do it because we
And
know
there's
that we have.
power in it.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Because we have a strong foundation. So the power
Hmm.
just comes out because we spent that time together. So start small. That's the biggest thing I heard. Start small and branch out. Start
So
with the
smart.
relationship. Start with the awareness of saying, I can't do this by myself. Start building relationships
Hmm.
and go. Go. Go for
Hmm.
it. Whatever it is, go for it. That is what I heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's okay to be vulnerable. Like,
Yeah,
it's okay. You
yeah,
can't be vulnerable with everybody all the time, but there are safe places and safe spaces,
100%.
where vulnerability can happen. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
mean being vulnerable won't hurt or sting, but overall, it'll be worth it.
100%. It is worth it. It's like anything else. You get over that initial hump, or you get over that initial fear, and then you kind of coasting from there. You just got to get over that initial hump,
Mhm.
and that initial anxiety, and then you go on. Court board said some people would never be ready for that type of revolution. Some are waiting for the go ahead to fight straight up. And I think that's why it's important to be in community, so that you're not having to make those decisions on your own or try to figure out what's next on your own. You just be ready to go, no plan. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X are not the only people, but they were very strategic in what they did. So you may have seen them on the front
Mhm.
lines or behind the lecterns and the pulpits or out in the streets. But everything they did, they trained before they went out. They trained the people that were with them before they went out. They like almost like practice. They spent time
Mhm.
together and then they went out. It wasn't just on a whim, like, let's go. It was, again, relationship building and training, so that when we get out here in these streets, we are like a solid wall that no one can break and no one can get through. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that, court board, because that's so true. um and as we kind of talk about that, we talk about, letting go of things like the shame and almost being embarrassed to be vulnerable. One of the big things that I was thinking about as we kind of went through this was breaking cycles. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things we hear aren't necessarily true, but it's just been passed down. And there are things that we
Mm-hmm.
hold on to. I was talking to somebody. I heard this story a few times, but this lady reminded me of it. She was talking about the story about the ham, where the lady would cut off the parts of the ham and put it in the pot, and she never knew why, but she did it because she saw her grandma do it, her mom do it. And when they asked the grandma was like, "Well, my pot won't big enough. That's why I cut the ham." It
Uh-huh.
was like, you wasting good ham because you
I
don't
heard this say,
understand.
you don't understand. You don't
As high as
understand.
groceries are.
And we have not, right. And we have not always been taught that it's okay to ask questions, but that is a trauma.
Right.
That is that is that is a historical trauma because there was a time
Mm-hmm.
where we could not ask questions,
Right.
could not, and I mean that is just a broad spectrum of places and who, and even drawing down on the specifics of the who. Um,
Right.
but there was a time where, as Black folk, you did not ask question, and particularly as Black women, you
Yep.
don't ask question.
That's it.
And let's get to it. And
Mm-hmm.
even as believers, we
Mm-hmm.
have
That's
been
it.
taught to not ask questions, and some of that is because of one not knowing the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at some hand, and some of that too is, I think you pressed upon that a few moments ago, the guilt and the shame that
Mm-hmm.
we bear of the truth and the reality of the answer that we must
Mm-hmm.
give, but we got to let that thing go
We do.
because it is one sinful, and it is eating us alive in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, and in our relationships.
That's 100. We could stay on that like all night. Because that's so true, because of the effects of that, of not asking questions. And those things like, don't question God. No,
Hmm.
you need to ask God some questions. I need you to ask
Yeah.
God some questions, because God, one, is probably in some situations the only person that got a good answer for you. Um,
Come on.
and two, like, the more you ask questions, I believe the more revelation that you get, because you're asking
Absolutely.
because you want to know. So the more you want to know and the more you're exploring, the more you start to find out from reading, from experiencing, from spending time.
Hmm.
So this question is really centered around, like, there's some things that just do not serve us, like not asking questions, like not trying to navigate and inquire about, okay, why do we do this? Not from a smart way, but honest, from a very, like, I'm inquisitive. I want to know. I'm curious about this. Why do we do certain things? And we even touched on this a little bit last week. We talked about, like, wearing gloves and covering communion, things like that, where there's a historical
Mm.
context for it, but we've brought some things into modern day that had very practical reasons during slavery and things like that. But we continue the tradition, but we often don't tell people why we do it, because now it's more symbolism. Because it's not, if I can be honest, and I don't mean this in a blasphemous way, if this or sound like a heretic, but like, there's some things that we do in church that are so unnecessary, because our our ancestors did it for practical reasons, and we don't necessarily need it, because they did it because they were outside, they did it because their hands were dirty, they did it because, whatever the reason, they put one hand behind their back. But if you really knew why these things were happening, 9 times out of 10 you would stop. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't put your finger up
Absolutely.
when you go out of church. You would, if you knew the history and the context of it, you would not want to do it. or want anybody else to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
So these things really, this question really is centered around those things that we're doing that don't serve us, or even I don't want to answer. I want you to answer, so I'm gonna be quiet. So uh, things like, struggle without solutions, resilience without rest, these things that are really harming our community. So when you think about it, and we kind of touched on it already, but what are some old messages that we need to let go of? And then part two of that question is, what new ones should we embrace?
Oh man. What happens in this house stays in this house.
Mm, yeah.
Um, that those are even even how um even how we extend ooh we even how we extend have a hyper extension of grace for things that are just
Mm,
flat out wrong, right?
yeah.
Excusing situations and having so much grace because we don't want to rock the boat and call a thing a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that too is not recognizing the power in our voice and trusting that inner compass inside of us that says you have a that this can't continue. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just even more simply, you already answered the question. Asking yourself, why do I do this? Why do I behave this way? That simple question has so much power. It has so much power in it because oftentimes, whether it's how we respond to how somebody has said something to us, um, our response to getting cut off on the driving down the road, our response to our children when they are calling our names 50, 11 times. These these responses and how we why we do certain things within a worship experience or within a church or a religious or spiritual context.
Yeah.
Some things have just become so robotic that we never simply pause simply to even understand why we do a thing. Why do I put my pants on like this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally a simple question like that. I was like, oh, I really do this way because if I lead with my right foot, like I don't, my knee is hurting. Right. But just those, why do so let me pause. I just spent some time with myself um, over the past maybe 8 months now, trying to unpack and understand. And this goes into who you are, your identity, um, characteristics. We have gotten so far away from wanting to be labeled that we have forgotten to embrace the labels that have been given to us by God. Have forgotten that there is a book with our name on it written. About us in the book of heaven. And we have allowed society to think that asking certain questions of our behavior and our beliefs makes us less than who we are. And what it really does is it gives us something, it gives us power, it gives us more tools, it gives us foundation to continue to stand on our beliefs. It makes us be unshakable in a way that doesn't close us off but opens our horizons,
That's good.
opens us up as vessels when we ask those things of ourselves, the things that we do, and even questioning those that are in authority, um, or maybe our superiors. There's a way in which you can do these things without being disrespectful, but it helps you to understand and know that it helps us to understand and know that,
Good.
hey, sometimes we need a little bit of receipt. Sometimes we need a little receipt.
Yeah, that's good. Oh my gosh, that was power packed. And I think, like you said, it's the questioning in a respectful way. It is the even just the way that you think about, like, having the mind. And one of the big things for me, especially in faith spaces, and again, it's another another Virginia Union thing, is critical thinking. Dr.
Mm-hmm.
McKenzie used to always talk about like not leaving your brain. Like when you go to worship, don't leave your brain at the door. So you have this spiritual
Mm-hmm.
experience, but you also need to be doing some critical thinking while you're in that space. And if something doesn't sound right, investigate it, ask questions, um, do research on your own, even like you said, with your leaders, like, hey, you said this, or hey, I heard this. Can you
Mm-hmm.
break that down? Because it could be we did hear it wrong. Like they said something, but the way that you heard it and what they meant didn't connect. But it also could be something that needs further investigation, and it can be done
Right.
in a very respectful way. But we do ourselves a disservice when we don't ask the questions,
Yeah.
because now we don't get to even explore the knowledge. It's just like, oh, I don't know. We just kind of leave it. We kind of drop the ball there.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's
you leave a lot on the table. Like the note taking on Sunday morning, that's not just to look like you're all intuitive and like you're paying attention. No, go back and ask questions of what you
right.
wrote down and what you heard. And some of the things, I think the second part to that is, what are some of the things that we need to pick up? We need to normalize mental health within the Black community and within the Black church.
Good.
One, um, normalize again, asking questions, and becoming, even within our biblical text. I like to tell my young people, I need y'all to be private investig. I need y'all to be detectives like First 48. I need
Yeah.
you to turn over every rock to see, go down the rabbit hole. And sometimes that may be more than one, more than just your Bible. You said that earlier at the beginning of this. We have to embrace and get into, lean into, start picking up these new habits of learning and education and sharing what we have
Yeah.
learned with others.
That's good. And I think the big part of that, like do the investigation and remember, and don't, I hope this doesn't is received the way that I mean it. The Bible is not God.
There
So
we go.
the Bible is a resource that we
Yeah.
have. The Bible is still written and influenced by people. The Bible is not
Mhm.
God. God is so much
God.
bigger and more vast and grand than just the Bible. So read your Bible, but do not make the Bible your God. God is God and the Bible is
Mm.
they are not the same thing. That's one of the big things for me, because it's like, oh, I got the Bible. That is great. Read other resources and have relationship with God and with people. Because if you make the Bible your God, you've now put yourself in a box. So you can't learn anything
Yeah.
else. And you need more than just that. And Jesus didn't have no
And
Bible.
don't forget the discernment of the Holy Spirit. So don't leave your discernment
Right.
uh down either.
Yes.
Grab
That's
all your tools and your spirit, because she will help you all the way.
Yes. So have your toolbox and have the Bible in it. But no, like I really want to make that distinction, because I think, especially as I think about
Mhm.
Black church, often depending on, what denomination. And again, like I said, I grew up, y'all don't attack me because I grew up Baptist. And the Bible is a big part of that. But I don't want us to misconstrue as if those two things are the same thing, because they are not. And often I think we do it even if we don't do it consciously. Some of us may do that, but asking the questions helps break us out of that box. Asking the questions and asking God questions and asking people questions and
Mhm.
doing research and talking to your leaders. As long as you have healthy, well-versed leaders, that's a great space to go into to ask questions for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That opened up a lot. And we did have a comment. So I asked the audience too how they would answer that. Court board said one of the things to let go of is that we can't speak on people's missteps in institutions instead of using them as lessons and moving differently. So we have to let go of some of those things about we
Mm-hmm.
can't speak on certain things, or we can't do things, or we learn a lesson from it. There's some things that we have to let go of, and even in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us, I think this is our, yeah, one of our coming into the end of the conversation. But we know there are a lot of influences out there. There are a lot of things that, tell us about getting money, spending money, generational wealth. There's so many things. But I believe knowledge, money is wealth. Yes. Knowledge is also wealth. Being healthy is also wealth. So there are different things that looks like. Having autonomy over your own body is the type of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But from media to music, business to books, ownership matters. So as we talk about controlling your own narrative, that's also owning your own story. So
Yeah.
how can we be more intentional about creating, supporting, and sustaining spaces where we control our own narrative?
Excuse me. And you said from media to music.
Yeah.
When I think about those, immediately my mind puts them kind of on this spectrum. Um, and then I begin to think about how we have been showing up in these spaces from media to music. Those are powerful places where our voices can be amplified and are being amplified positively and at times negatively.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to realize that, and you know, I, my prayer is that we realize that we are telling our story one way or another. We are telling our story. We are teaching people how to treat us, whether it's how to treat us. And let me be careful about how I say this because let me pause and say this before I complete this sentence. I am not at any point stating or saying or believing that anyone deserves anything that happens to them, any bad thing, any oppression, abuse, injustices. That is not what I am saying. But what I am saying is we have to take accountability and responsibility and understand what narrative do we want people to believe about us. Do
Mm.
we want to continue to push this thing based off, and this is more so I'm talking young people, come close to me. Come real close. We when we put all that hippity hoopla up on our social media, when we start rapping and saying all of these things, yes, some of it is creative artsmanship and freedom of speech, but we are also putting out a history. We are also putting out information at times that gives credit to the lies, to the fake news of what people want to believe about us as Black people, as Black men, as Black women, as Black boys, and as Black girls. We have so much inside of us. We need to use these spaces as pockets of influences, understanding that there are people that are listening to us. We have something to say. Our voices matter. These are pockets in which we have used before Facebook or MySpace. We've used these outlets to communicate, to leave behind a historical footprint that shows how rich and how powerful we are, how
Yeah.
creative we are. And that did not stop then. We have so much more creativity and inventions and businesses and ideas and been able to stand on the shoulders of those that have come before us. But we got to realize that it is our responsibility to tell our story from those that have come before us to the generations that will come. And we can
That's
do
good.
that in several different ways. I'm not sure if that's what you meant by from
Yeah.
media to music. so to speak. But if we haven't learned anything over the past couple of years, take a look at the YSL Young Thug case. just just take a look there. Um, but there is room for us. But it's our choice.
Yeah,
It is. We have power. We have authority. We gotta stop believing that we have been completely silenced,
it's
because
good.
they can't silence the power of the resilience and the voice and the strength of Black folk. They've tried and tried before,
Yeah,
but we will not be quiet, and
that's
neither should
good.
you.
That's good. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant, because one of the things I was thinking about with media, with music, businesses, like all of those things was one, just the sound. I've been studying music more as it relates to Black history, probably more this year, the last couple of years. And one of the things I really look at is like you said, what are we putting out there? So when you look at different movements, there's almost like a sound that goes with a lot of different movements. Even if we just
Mm-hmm.
don't, we don't have to go all the way back, but we can go back to like the spirituals that were sung, and even the deeper meanings of, I'm singing this song, but I'm really planning to run
Mm-hmm.
off this plantation tonight. So this
Yeah.
song is not just me trying to get through my day of work. My song is me communicating with my community. Tonight we out. Like
These
we
field
out of
hollers.
here.
That's what they
Yeah,
call field hollers.
that's it. We out, y'all. And these people that are not part of our culture have no idea what's happening. But we
Yeah.
have a plan, and this is how we're communicating. Even if they don't understand it, this is how we're communicating, and we're owning what we're gonna do, even if we have to speak in coded language. Also, like
Mm-hmm.
music, thinking about like the civil rights movement with like
Mm-hmm.
I'm Black and I'm proud, a change is gonna come. These songs, I love Nina Simone. So Nina Simone, these songs that really
Oh,
spoke to the beauty of Black people, the
yes.
hardship of Black people, the experiences of Black people, while also holding on to the hope of, it's like that, but I'm still pressing forward, and I'm still pressing on, and I'm still pressing from even the foundations that my ancestors laid. I'm controlling the narrative
Mm-hmm.
in that way. I know what you say about me, but I also know what I believe about me to be true. So those
Yeah.
are like the major things that I pull. Black Wall Street, the different areas where we owned. No, we don't have to go to your restaurant, because we own restaurants, we own
We
barbershops,
got
we
our
own
own.
banks. In Richmond, right? You
We
were in
own
Richmond,
malls.
right?
Oh
We
yeah, banks
own,
in. Oh man.
and we'll keep our money circulating in our community. That's how we control. We write our books. We write things like Katie's Canon,
Yeah.
and we write things like how like Howard Thurman and all these different writers that really
Mm-hmm.
spoke to how, even from a spiritual form, how God and Jesus saw me versus how my white counterparts, how they're trying to put me
See
down.
me.
I'm controlling
Mm-hmm.
my narrative. Yeah, Bobby
Mm-hmm.
said, own our own we own grocery stores. We own these things. So we are
Yeah.
now sustaining space for our people, not just in a spiritual, emotional way, but also in a very practical way. You can come spend the
Practical
night
way.
at this hotel. You can come bank with
Mm-hmm.
us. You
Mm-hmm.
can come get a hot meal. You can come get groceries. You can come experience Black art. And y'all probably can't see my sweatshirt, but this is an Alvin Ailey. Like, you can be a liturgical
Black.
ballet. Like, you can do that. You may see
Yeah.
all
Black
these
music.
Caucasian, but we have Black ballerinas and dancers. Like, there's
Yes.
so many things. We
Gymnasts.
control it. There are people, you can
Yeah.
do it. Even if you see something else mainstream, know that you can, whatever that dream is or that thing is, like, own the narrative, because you can become whatever that thing is. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. And the other part of it is exactly what you said. People already view many of us as less than human. So part of us controlling the narrative is also not feeding into that, and not always making the music and pulling each other down and talking bad about one another, and creating, feeding into the narrative. That's exactly, like, I'm complicit.
Mm-hmm.
When I start
Mm-hmm.
start justifying everything that my counterparts are saying about me, I am complicit with them. I am now bringing down my own community because I'm talking bad about Black women or children or men or whatever the case may be. I'm now complicit, and I don't want to be complicit with white, racist, Nazi. I don't want to be complicit with those people. I don't.
Exactly.
So I'm controlling my own
Even
energy.
our preaching, preachers, even our preaching. I said it.
That's it. That's it. I don't want to preach. I don't want you to ever come anywhere that I'm preaching and it is in line with evangelical. I'm just, since we're here, with evangelical or patriarchy or misogyny or putting down groups of people that God loves. I don't want, if you ever come, I want you to come up in the pulpit and take the mic out of my hand if you ever hear me doing that, because I'm going to always preach against those things. You will not hear a sermon
Yeah.
from me where I do not preach against those things. I know it for a
Yeah.
fact. It's going to
Yeah.
come out. It's going to be empowering my people, and it will never be in line. It will never be
Never.
complicit with those things. If anything, it
Never.
will call those things out, but it will never be complicit. And I stand by that 100%. And Carrie's on K, call me KP. Our other sister is on, she's
Hey.
on IG. She said ownership is liberation. And that is 100% true. Ownership is liberation.
Liberation.
I don't have to
Ah.
buy from your stores. And I think we may see another wave of that, when we think about the boycotts that happened, again, not that far back in history, in the 60s, in the 50s, the boycotts that happened. When you start taking money out of people's pockets, things start changing. So if I'm no longer using, we're boycotting certain stores that roll back DEI and things like that. If I start taking my money and I think Jamal Bryant or somebody else mentioned how quick the black dollar leaves the black. It's like 6 hours. It's something crazy. It's not even a full day that the black dollar circulates through the black community. I want to say he said it
Yeah.
was it was like 6 hours, right?
I
So
saw
we're
that
going
post
out
earlier.
and we're
Yeah.
spending. Yeah, it's great. We're spending money with other communities, and don't get me wrong, nothing is wrong with buying, across ethnicity and races. There's an issue when our black dollar is not empowering our black community, but we're making other people millionaires and billionaires. But the first time we go to a black business, and this was not this, but we hear the first time you go to a black business
Come
and
on.
you have a bad experience, you're not going back, but you will go back over and over again to our counterparts, no matter how bad the service is, no matter what type of experience you have. But if you come to my hair salon and it takes too long, you ain't never coming back. And now all black
And you
businesses
drag
are
them y'all
black.
on social media and
Yeah,
everything, but yet we'll still keep shopping at Target because it's convenient. And we
yeah,
don't realize how much of our dollar we are pumping into these companies and corporations that clearly don't give a rat's behind about us. And yet we are like putting their children through school and putting food on their tables, and our babies are hungry, and our babies don't even know if they're going to be able to go to sophomore year through college. Stop shopping Amazon. Stop. Like, the package didn't come and you're still ordering.
yep. They delivered to the wrong address. It's late. You gonna order. You're not gonna say nothing. Let a black business take too long. It is. They are, like you said, they're blasted. So it's like we gotta. Part of us controlling the narrative is also having the same patience that you have with other places with these, because even going back to the background, a lot of times black businesses do not get that. They are discriminated against from the jump. They do not get the same
Absolutely.
funding opportunities.
And then,
It doesn't matter what your credit score is or what experience you are. There are so many banks, and there have been studies shown that people get denied for loans, not because they were not credit worthy, but because they were black. And some people, oh, it's not a
yep,
black, it is a black issue
it's a
when
black
other
issue.
entities are making it a black issue. So if I have the credit score and I have the ability and I have the business plan or whatever, if I have all those things in place and I still get denied, it is a black issue, because you're denying me based on my blackness, nothing else. housing
That's it.
loans. Wells Fargo. If
And
we go
don't
back,
think
Wells
that your
Fargo.
one voice And don't think that your one voice doesn't have impact. I hear so many people say, "Oh, well, I'm just one person. I'm not going to make a difference." Yes, you will.
Hmm.
Your decision and that sharing of information, the impact and the influence that you have on the people around you, these things collectively, right? That we go back to organizing and being community. When we
Yes,
organize, when we have strategy, when we come together in people and relational capital, change happens. Relational capital is more powerful and more influential than economic
that's
power.
good. That's good.
All day.
That's good. Absolutely. And even looking, and I'm gonna move from this, but even looking at our counterparts, if you look at many families from that'll come outside the country here, they will buy. It'll be four families in one house. They will get that house.
Hmm.
They will pay that house up, and then it's the next family's turn. Then they get their house. But that's collaboration. Like if we did think, imagine if
Hmm.
we did more of us, because some people are doing it. But imagine if we did that. Hey,
More.
we're gonna all go in. We're gonna buy this house, and then we're gonna pay it down or pay it off. Then we're gonna get your house, and then we're gonna pay it down and pay it off, and then you get your house. Now we're all homeowners, and nobody had to do it
Hmm.
alone, and everybody had their turn. People get on like, I'm not gonna go real deep, but get on like susus and things like that, and they talk bad about them, but don't realize the concept of it
Yeah.
was pouring
Yep.
into this one person, and then we pour into the next person. When you do it right, it actually builds the community. When you do it
Yes.
right.
When you do it right.
Because if everybody ain't participating, then yeah, you did get scammed because everybody do what they did. But when you do it right, people benefit,
It's
and not just
powerful.
individuals, but completely families and units benefit from it. So I believe this is
Yes.
our last audience question. What do you think is the biggest challenge to controlling our own narrative? And we may have hinted at a few of these things, not being
Mm-hmm.
together, giving up on our own community very quickly while giving others more grace. Um, those are some of the things. So from what you see if you're in the audience. So Antoine, hey Bobby. What are some things that you have seen as far as this is a challenge? That's why we can't control our own narrative. I think TCU even hinted at it, like sometimes the music and the things that we put out, we now have contributed to this negativity that is kind of overshadowing so many great things that are happening in our communities, but we're only talking about the violence. We're only talking about the things that they accuse us of. That we're only talking about guidance. We're only talking violence. We're only talking about the drugs. We're only talking about broken we're only focusing on that, where there's so many things around that people actually are owning homes and becoming business owners, and making great salaries and have family
Mm-hmm.
units, is that if that is what they desire, and they're able to travel, they're able to do all these things, opening schools and doing these things. So if you're in the audience, think on that, and we're gonna move to the last question for Leticia, and that question is, if someone listening today wants to take a step, whether it's a big step or a small step, to reclaim our history, collaborate, or control their own story, where should they start?
You should start by sending a direct message to your host right here at Miss_Kelly or myself at me by Lee Marie, and let us send you some book sources. Let us send you some video sources, a place, easy entry point to credible resources where you can start digging and wondering and finding information. Find it, seek out communal spaces within your local city or your state. If you need help with that, we can definitely do that as well. But not to be over spiritual, but to be spiritual. Spending some time um, trying to understand what you're understanding and seeking from the divine what your first step needs to be. What is it that I need to know? What do I need to start with?
It's good.
And taking direction from there. Um, because sometimes we think there's this particular thing that we want to know, but then there's work that needs to be done before that. So do your due diligence to just spend quiet time, understand what do I know, what do I not know, what do I want to know more of, where do my interests lie, what have I wondered about myself or about my ancestors or about my people. What do I see as a challenge, and where do I want to fix or impact positively?
Good. That's good. And I think that's it. The beginning. I'm an educator, so I'm always gonna be like you said. Get resources, credible keyword, credible resources,
Credible.
and you can always, like she said, send me a DM, send her a DM. Credible resources, and that's books, that's articles, that's people, that's videos, that's having conversation. Like that could be so many things. Like you don't have to go get a degree or take classes. You can read books, you can read articles, and that will really point you in the right direction. Because again, we perish because of lack of knowledge, and often our communities die out because somebody just didn't know. And there is a certain point where it's like, okay, we need you to figure this out, because we know that there are times when you don't know, but we cannot, especially in our um, society today, we cannot afford to not know.
Hmm.
Like, people are
Yeah.
dying, people are losing jobs, people are losing income, families are being ripped apart, false narratives and false information is going through our feeds every day. We cannot afford to not know. And I mean that emotionally, mentally, physically, intellectually, financially. You cannot afford to not know. And you don't have to know everything, but you do need to do your own due diligence, like she stated. And you also need to be in community. So there may be some things that I bring to the conversation. There's some things that you bring to the conversation. Everybody plays a role. So you don't have to know everything, but you do need to be connected to other people so that you are getting some kind of intel to be able to move forward. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to take on the whole world, but you do have to do your own due diligence in order to move forward. So thank you for saying that. And this is just the last thing. What We did have someone answer that question about what's the biggest challenge. Court board said not intellectually knowing how our narrative fits into the whole. So not knowing how our narrative fits into the whole of society. And I think that's a great response, because again, if you don't know where you're fit, somebody, I don't even know who I was listening to, was
That's
saying like
good.
almost like an identity crisis. You don't know who you are because you don't know where you came from. You're not sure where you're going. But if you understand it in context, it helps at least point you in the right
Yeah.
direction. And like you said, talking to God, talking to your creator will help bring even more knowledge to that. So you don't want to take that for granted that you're able to do that. So thank you so much, TC, for tonight. Um,
And our children's lives depend on it.
yes, this is a generational thing. So it's not just us. It is those coming up, those that we're raising, those that we have influence over, those that we are teaching. They need us. And speaking of, this is where we and I know it's a little bit after 10 o'clock. The event does have some things coming up. So as we talk about community moving forward, coming together, starting April, we will be on your block. So April of this year, we are traveling across. We're going to start in 757. I know we're going to expand, but we're going to start in 757. And one thing that we really want to do is be able to continue to build community, to heal, to bring hope. So we'll be in parking lots, we'll be in neighborhoods, games, food, music, and an empowering message. So you're able to get that safe space, similar to how we are online, but you're able to get that in person, in community, connect with people, network with people, as well as be spiritually, physically, and emotionally fed. So we'll have resource tables out there. We'll have different things that you can grab onto, and we'll have some intangible things to build you up. So this is a completely free event. If you would like to be a part of it, if you have a space, you're like, man, y'all need to bring this to, whatever city or space you're in, definitely send me a DM. If you would like to contribute to our efforts, because we talk about this, as we talk about Black businesses and nonprofits, it takes money to be able to reach people. So if you would like to donate and partner with us in that way, you can scan the QR code, or you can text OYB, which stands for On Your Block, to 53555. All your donations will help us with providing food, with providing mental health resources, with setting up very logistical things like sound, like staging, like renting space. So we are always excited to connect with people, whether you show up, whether you give, whether you're like, hey, you have a suggestion for a space that we should go to. It's a collaborative effort. So we want everyone to be a part in any capacity. And again, that's starting in April. If you want more information, you can also visit our website. Our website is eventmovement.life. So you can visit our website as well to find more information and to connect with us in many different ways. So I'm always excited to connect with people, always excited to be able to do ministry in spaces that are not always what you thought it would be. So TC, is there do you have a final thought that you would like to leave us with? We would love to hear from you if there's a final thought you just want to leave us with.
My final thought is to remember that we are indeed better together. I am because you are. It takes the village, not just to raise the child, but to raise one another. It's time for us to come together. Let's fight together. Let's do life together. And let's win together. Our lives depend on it. Our future depend on it. Our children's lives depend on it. And we can do this thing. We are so strong, so powerful. And let's agree today that we refuse to let our light be put out. We will let our light shine. Thanks for having me here, Kelly. As always,
Absolutely.
it's been fantastic to be here, to be such a blessing, to be in this virtual sanctuary, doing ministry from the streets to the live, and
That's
that's
it.
how I always like to rock, man. Thanks for what you do.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for dropping knowledge on us, for encouraging us, for challenging us. We need that. One of the big things, we always want people to walk away thinking. And you definitely dropped some information on us that I'm sure a lot of people are chewing on and thinking about. So that is the goal, to get us charged up and get us moving. So I'm excited for all that will come because this conversation happened. Thank you again for coming on. I couldn't think of anyone better to kick off Black History Month. So thank you so much for being here with us. It's always valuable to be in space and share in ministry with you. So we're excited, and we know we will definitely see you again. But thank you again to everyone that was in the comments. Thank you for your vulnerability, for your transparency, for
Yes.
your your hope that you still hold it on to. Like, that's a big deal. So thank you for just being open and joining it. Thank you all. I hope you all have a great night. Take care of yourself. Know that you are not alone. You have community, and know that if you need resources, again, you can DM either one of us, and we will send you some credible resources to explore as you're on your journey of knowledge and controlling the narrative. Good night, everyone. We'll see you again, same place, same time next week, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Have a great night.